So I used to be a skinny fat kid. I was very insecure with the way I looked. And eventually it got to the point where I was like, screw this. And I had to research what to actually do to go from being a skinny fat kid to ultimately having a physique that I wanted and was proud of. What I came across was that there's clear advice for what to do if you're too skinny, and there's clear advice as to what to do if you're too fat. But it was never clear cut what the best course of action to take was if you were skinny fat, because it's ambiguous as to whether you should bulk or cut. And it's not as obvious as just telling the extremely fat person that they should stop eating as much food. And it's also not as simple as saying to the extremely skinny person that they should just eat more food. So being skinny fat is just this awkward stage where you don't really know what to do. And I was the exact same. So I've definitely come a long way from where I was 4-5 years ago in terms of my physique. But if I had to go back and tell my younger self what to do in terms of training and especially nutrition, these are the things that I would be telling my former self. The first thing is that you need to start lifting weights immediately. The reason that you have a non-aesthetic physique is because your frame simply just doesn't have enough muscle on it. And it ends up to you looking like this. So get a gym membership, go to your school gym, do whatever, and build some muscle first. And the way you do that is by lifting weights. To illustrate this point, I want to compare two different photos with you. The first photo is Jason Momoa. Now, obviously, he's a pretty muscular guy, but I wouldn't say that he's completely shredded in this photo. So he is holding a bit of body fat. But the thing is that to your average person, this is still an incredible physique. It's a physique that most males would trade for their current physique. It's a physique that females would find attractive most of the time. The reason for this is because he has muscle on his frame. So despite having higher level of body fat, it doesn't really adversely affect his physique as bad as it would if he didn't have as much muscle as he does. Now, look at this second photo. In my opinion, at least, this is a bang average physique. I don't think many people would want this physique, nor do I think many women would find it particularly attractive. This person is clearly holding a lot of body fat, but because there isn't as much muscle mass on this person's frame, the physique looks overall a lot worse compared to Jason Momoa because there isn't that muscle mass underneath the fat. So the point I'm trying to make here is that you can have a similar level of body fat, but depending on the amount of muscle mass you have underneath that body fat, it can impact how your physique looks overall. So if you have more muscle mass underneath your fat, your physique is going to look clearly better. And the way that you build muscle is by going to the gym and lifting weights. A mistake that I made was trying to cut weight from the very beginning without lifting at all. So in terms of muscle mass on my body, it stayed the same, but my fat levels dropped. And if I had just started training from the very beginning, lifting weights, I would have had more muscle and therefore would have looked so much better at the body fat that I ultimately got down to. So if I could go back, I would drill into my former self to just start going to the gym, get a gym membership, literally just pick up a weight because it's so easy to gain muscle as a beginner as well. Okay, so now onto the more contentious part and more confusing part for a lot of people, I would say. How do you go about eating when you're skinny fat? Because you're not too skinny to the point where you should obviously bulk, nor are you too fat to the point where you should obviously cut. So what's the solution? First, I want to say that I think there's a spectrum of skinny fat. So imagine this is a spectrum. On this end, you have the skinnier end of people that are skinny fat. And on this end, you have the fatter people that are skinny fat. The closer you are to the fatter side, the more inclined I would be to say you should probably cut, and vice versa. So the closer you are to being skinny, the more likely you should probably bulk. But I'm going to guess that most people are going to be closer to this side of the spectrum and would have a physique something like this and be holding excess amounts of body fat. So the view that I'm going to put forward is that if you're skinny fat, you should probably cut. Another reason why I think that the answer is that you should probably be cutting is being someone that is skinny fat and is constantly trying to hide their fat and is insecure of it. Once you actually make that first change and are able to see changes in your physique by reason of the fat you've lost, I think it's extremely motivating. Compare that to the skinny fat person that here's the advice that they need to put on muscle, and the way they put on muscle is by bulking. That person is ultimately just going to end up putting on more fat. And because they put on more fat, it's almost as if they're seeing their physique get worse. And I think that is very demoralizing and can lead to that person not continuing with their overall training and fitness journey. Something I found when I initially lost a bit of fat when I was skinny fat was I just felt a lot more confident in simple things like taking my shirt off at the beach or the pool, or if you're in the change rooms at school, taking your shirt off when you're getting changed. You just feel a lot more comfortable and confident. And I think that's especially beneficial for your mental state. And again, compare that to the person that bulks when they're skinny fat. They're just going to become more insecure, less confident, and less comfortable in those types of situations. Now, while I did say the answer is that you should probably be cutting, there is one caveat to this. And that caveat is that you should not cut for too long. And that was a mistake that I made. So after being skinny fat and losing that fat and feeling more confident and comfortable, you get scared to ever put that fat back on ever again. And so what I did was continually restrict the amount of food and the amount of calories that I was eating out of fear that if I ever did increase my calories again, it would lead to me putting back on that fat that I had just worked so hard to lose. But when you're training in the gym, you need to be eating enough food to be able to fuel your workouts and to be able to facilitate muscle growth. I was just so obsessed with trying to lose weight that it ultimately was detrimental to my performance in the gym and how much muscle I was ultimately putting on and my progress in the gym as well. So after a while, it gets to the point where by continuing to cut, you're not really getting any more benefit. You're not really losing any more fat because your maintenance calories have just become so much lower. And at the same time, you're losing some of the potential progression that you can make in the gym as well. And the thing is, you don't have to eat that much more food. You only have to eat slightly above your maintenance calories and you'll be in a lean bulk, and trust me, you will not get fat again. The reason that you're not going to get fat again is because number one, you've got that increased muscle mass now from that initial period of training. So if you do put on any extra fat, you're not going to look as bad, or you're not going to look like you used to, because now you've got so much more muscle on your frame that you're going to be looking more like Jason Momoa compared to that first skinny fat photo. The fact that you also have more muscle on your frame now means that you're going to be burning more calories at rest. So what that means is that you have to eat relatively more calories and more food to put on fat again. So it's going to be a lot harder to put fat on, put weight on, compared to what it used to be like, because you've got more muscle, which burns more calories. And I've definitely gone through phases of being at lower levels of body fat and being at higher levels of body fat after starting to train. So I'll give you these two photos. They're about 6 to 8 months apart. And in the first photo, I'm 72 kilos. In the second photo, I'm around 78 kilos. You can see that I've put on body fat in between the two photos, especially in that lower stomach area. But I don't look conventionally fat in that second photo. Like to the average person, I think they would still say that's a pretty decent physique. Definitely not fat. And honestly, I still have somewhat visible abs, even though I am tensing. And I think the thing with being skinny fat is that as you just continually keep training over the years, you just put on more and more muscle to the point where the muscle to fat ratio on your body just becomes much more in favor of the muscle and therefore leads to a physique that does not resemble much of the skinny fat, but now resembles more of that classic aesthetic type physique. And that just comes with time, I think. Some of these photos that I'm showing you now as well are after me only having trained for about 6 months or a year. And that's like on and off training as well. I can't stress to you enough how much worse I looked before the taking of these photos. So training for that first 6 months and potentially cutting a bit of weight for that first 6 months can make such an incredible change in your physique straight away. And those mental benefits, physical benefits, everything that comes with that is just so good, and it comes within such a short amount of time. So the main points, if you're skinny fat, is that you should start training immediately. Get some muscle on your frame and you will look so much better. Doesn't matter what your body fat is. The second point in terms of nutrition is that you should probably be trying to lose weight. And by losing body fat, you're just going to be so much more comfortable and happy with your physique that I think that positive feedback you get will feed back into you sticking to your fitness journey over the long term. So if you enjoyed this video, learned anything from it, please consider subscribing. We are hitting 1,000 subscribers. Also, leave a like, leave a comment. If you've got any thoughts, express them down below. Always happy to chat, and I read everything. See you later.